Most people think family means love and loyalty, but I learned the hard way. Family can also mean debt, manipulation, and betrayal. My name is Samantha Lewis, and the moment I signed those papers to help my sick mother, I didn't just agree to pay medical bills. I signed away my freedom. This is the story of how my family turned love into a legal contract, and how I fought back. It started on a rainy Tuesday. I never thought a simple signature could change my entire life. I know that sounds dramatic, like something from a thriller novel or one of those late-night YouTube stories people watch for entertainment. But this isn't entertainment. This is my real life. And I wish more than anything that it wasn't. It all started with a phone call. I was sitting at my desk in Austin, Texas, where I worked as a senior accountant for a mid-sized firm. It was a Wednesday afternoon, just after 4 p.m., when my phone rang. I almost let it go to voicemail. I had 3 reports to finish before the weekend, and I was already behind. But then I saw the caller ID, Michelle Lewis, my sister. We hadn't spoken in months. I sighed and picked up. "Hello?" Her voice was shaky. "Sam, it's Mom. She collapsed. She's in the hospital. It's bad." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "A stroke. The ambulance took her to St. Vincent's Medical Center. You need to come. Now." For a few seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't think. I stared out the window at the gray Austin skyline. My mother and I hadn't been close for years, not since I stopped being the family's unofficial financial savior. I'd set boundaries. I thought that was the healthy thing to do. But boundaries don't matter when it comes to family emergencies. At least that's what I told myself. "I'll be there soon," I said. I grabbed my purse and my keys and left the office without another word. St. Vincent's was about a 20-minute drive from my office. I barely noticed the traffic. My mind replayed every conversation I'd had, or hadn't had, with my mother over the past few years. The tension, the disappointment, the guilt. When I arrived, the waiting room was crowded. Michelle was there, pacing nervously. She looked older than I remembered. Stress had carved deep lines into her face. Her blonde hair was tied back in a messy bun, and dark circles framed her eyes. Jake, our older brother, sat slouched in a chair, scrolling on his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. Dad, Ronald Lewis, stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the parking lot. Michelle rushed over. "She's stable now, but the doctor said it's serious. She'll need surgery and maybe long-term care." I swallowed hard. What can I do? Dad turned toward me. His eyes were red, but his expression was strangely blank. "We need someone to authorize treatment. Insurance only covers so much. The hospital needs a family member to take financial responsibility." My heart sank. "Why me?" Michelle bit her lip. "Because Jake and we can't. My credit's wrecked. Well, Jake didn't even look up. "I'm not in a position to sign anything." I should have walked out right then, but guilt is a powerful thing. "I'll do it," I said quietly. That's when a man I didn't recognize stepped forward. He wore a sharp navy suit and carried a leather briefcase. "I'm Charles Reiner," he said smoothly. "Your family's legal counsel." I frowned. "Since when do we have a family lawyer?" Dad waved a hand. "Long story. He's helped us with a few things lately." Charles opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "These are standard hospital authorization forms, plus a temporary financial agreement to cover any gaps not handled by insurance." He laid them out on a small side table. "The hospital can't proceed without a responsible party's signature," he added. "It's mostly a formality." I glanced at the pages. Legal jargon. Fine print. "Can I read them first?" I asked. Michelle's eyes filled with tears. "Sam, please, there's no time. The doctors are waiting." Dad nodded. "It's just paperwork." Jake shrugged. "Don't be dramatic." I hesitated. Everything inside me screamed, "Slow down." But my mother was lying unconscious 2 floors above us. If signing a few papers could help her, wasn't that the right thing to do? I grabbed the pen Charles offered. "Where do I sign?" Good. The next few days were a blur. Mom underwent surgery. It went well, according to the doctors. She would need rehab and long-term care. but the prognosis was hopeful. I stayed at the hospital, juggling work emails and client calls from the waiting room. Jake disappeared entirely. Michelle showed up occasionally, but always left early, claiming her kids needed her. Dad stayed quiet. I barely saw him speak to the doctors. On the 5th day, Charles returned. "Thanks to your signature, the hospital could proceed without delay," he said. "You did the right thing." I nodded. Good. But something about his tone made my skin crawl. Thick. 2 weeks later, Mom was transferred to a rehabilitation facility. I tried to get back to my normal routine. Work, sleep, repeat. Then the first letter arrived. It was from Franklin Bank. Notice of Debt Assumption Agreement. Amount, $147,000. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands. The document stated that I had legally assumed responsibility for a consolidated family debt. The debt included a $70,000 personal loan taken out by my father, a $40,000 gambling debt linked to Jake, and a $37,000 defaulted credit card in Michelle's name. The letter referenced the contract I had signed at the hospital. I scanned the fine print. Paragraph 4.2. Assumption of financial obligations in exchange for maintaining familial legal ties. What the hell did that mean? I flipped to the last page. My signature, right there, clear as day. I felt sick. I called Charles immediately. His receptionist answered. "I'm sorry," she said. "Mr. Reiner is unavailable. I need to speak with him. It's urgent." "I'll pass along the message." The line went dead. I called Dad, voicemail. I called Michelle. No answer. Finally, I texted Jake. "Did you know about this debt?" He replied within seconds. "Guess you should have read the fine print, sis." My blood ran cold. The next morning, I went to the rehab facility to see Mom. She was awake, but groggy. I sat by her bed. "Mom," I whispered, "did you know about this? The debt? The contract?" Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she looked confused. Then her expression hardened. "You're part of this family," she said softly. "It's your duty to help. We all agreed." "What do you mean, agreed?" She closed her eyes. "You're the only one with a stable income. We had no choice." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "This wasn't a family decision," I said. "This was a setup." Mom didn't answer. I went home and pulled out the copies of the papers I had signed. That night, I barely slept. I reviewed every page, every clause. The contract wasn't just a medical authorization. It was a legally binding agreement. It stated that I would assume family debts, and in return, I would retain my legal status as a familial dependent for purposes of inheritance, medical decision-making, and other rights and recognitions. In other words, if I refused to pay, I would forfeit my status as a child in the family's legal framework. My own family had essentially written me into a contract where love had a price tag. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I needed help. Real help. Not Charles. Not anyone my family had hired. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Finally, I found her name. Erin Carter. We'd gone to college together. She was now a contract lawyer specializing in financial fraud. I sent her a message. "Erin, it's Sam. I've signed something bad. I think I've been trapped. Can we meet?" She replied almost instantly. "Of course, first thing tomorrow." That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the contract spread out on the table. Every page was covered in the signatures of people I once trusted, people who called me daughter, sister, people who had turned me into their financial prisoner. And as I stared at the final clause, failure to comply will result in forfeiture of familial association, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about money. This was about control, and I was going to fight back. The first sign that something was wrong should have been how eager they were for me to sign. When I walked into the hospital room that rainy Tuesday, I wasn't thinking about legal traps. I was thinking about my mother. Lorraine lay in the bed, pale and hooked up to machines. Her breath shallow. My dad, Ronald, sat beside her, clutching her hand like a man clinging to the edge of a cliff. Jake and Michelle were already there, standing stiffly near the window. Neither looked at me. "Mom wanted to wait until you arrived," Michelle said. Her tone was clipped, tired. "There are some forms we need to finalize." I should have asked more questions, but I didn't. I was too focused on what I thought was important: family. Jake held out a packet of papers. "It's just so the hospital can continue treatment," he explained. "Insurance isn't covering everything. Dad already signed, Michelle too. We need one more to qualify for the Family Financial Assistance Program." He sounded reasonable. Like always. Like the older brother who had once held my hand when I was afraid of thunderstorms. I took the pen. "Where's Erin?" I asked. Erin Carter was the family's longtime attorney. She had helped me with my student loans years ago. "She's on her way," Dad said quickly. "But this can't wait. The hospital needs it today." I looked at Mom. Her eyes opened slightly. "Please, Sam," she whispered. "Help us." So I signed. That was the moment everything changed, and I didn't even know it. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Mom recovered slowly. The doctors called it a miracle. I stayed longer than I planned, helping with errands and making sure the bills were paid. I didn't mind. I thought I was just doing what a daughter should. But every time I asked about the papers I signed, the answers were vague. "Don't worry about it," Jake said. "We'll handle everything," Michelle added. Erin never showed up. Whenever I called her office, the receptionist said she was out on leave. No further details. Then the letters started arriving. Thick envelopes marked "legal notice," all addressed to me. At first, I thought they were hospital bills, until I opened one and felt my stomach drop. Notice of debt transfer and assumption agreement. Per the signed family financial agreement dated, hospital date, Samantha Lewis assumes shared liability for outstanding family debts totaling $163,457. I reread it 3 times. Surely there was a mistake. I confronted Dad first. "What is this?" I demanded, waving the letter. His face darkened. "It's the agreement you signed." "I thought I was signing for medical consent or insurance." "No," he said coldly. "You signed the family contract. You agreed to assume a share of the family's financial obligations. In exchange, you retain rights as an heir and family member." "That's not possible. You tricked me. You're an adult. No one forced you to sign." His words sliced deeper than any lawyers could. Michelle chimed in, arms crossed. "We all took on responsibility. It's only fair." "Fair?" My voice cracked. "You hid this from me." Jake didn't say much, just stared at the floor. Guilt, or something like it, flickered in his eyes, but he didn't speak up. I drove to Erin Carter's office the next morning, determined to get answers. The office was empty, closed. A for lease sign hung crookedly in the window. When I called the number on Erin's business card, it was disconnected. She had vanished. That night, I read the entire agreement again. Buried in legal jargon, one line stood out. "Failure to meet debt obligations will result in forfeiture of inheritance rights and possible legal action by co-signers." In other words, if I didn't pay, my family could sue me for breaking a contract I never fully understood. And they had built it that way, planned it. A net I hadn't seen until it was too late. I wasn't just facing debt. I was facing betrayal by the people who were supposed to love me most. But they had made one mistake. They underestimated me. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My family had trapped me in a legal nightmare. They had planned it carefully, used my love and fear to corner me, but they had underestimated something: my ability to think clearly when everything was falling apart. By dawn, I had a plan. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream. That's what they expected. Instead, I would investigate, quietly, smartly. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the contract spread out on the table. Every page was covered in the signatures of people I once trusted, people who called me daughter, sister, people who had turned me into their financial prisoner. And as I stared at the final clause, failure to comply will result in forfeiture of familial association, I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't just about money, this was about control, and I was going to fight back. The first sign that something was wrong should have been how eager they were for me to sign. When I walked into the hospital room that rainy Tuesday, I wasn't thinking about legal traps. I was thinking about my mother. Lorraine lay in the bed, pale and hooked up to machines, her breath shallow. My dad, Ronald, sat beside her, clutching her hand like a man clinging to the edge of a cliff. Jake and Michelle were already there, standing stiffly near the window. Neither looked at me. "Mom wanted to wait until you arrived," Michelle said. Her tone was clipped, tired. "There are some forms we need to finalize." I should have asked more questions, but I didn't. I was too focused on what I thought was important: family. Jake held out a packet of papers. "It's just so the hospital can continue treatment," he explained. "Insurance isn't covering everything. Dad already signed, Michelle too. We need one more to qualify for the Family Financial Assistance Program." He sounded reasonable. Like always. Like the older brother who had once held my hand when I was afraid of thunderstorms. I took the pen. "Where's Erin?" I asked. Erin Carter was the family's longtime attorney. She had helped me with my student loans years ago. "She's on her way," Dad said quickly. "But this can't wait. The hospital needs it today." I looked at Mom. Her eyes opened slightly. "Please, Sam," she whispered. "Help us." So I signed. That was the moment everything changed, and I didn't even know it. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Mom recovered slowly. The doctors called it a miracle. I stayed longer than I planned, helping with errands and making sure the bills were paid. I didn't mind. I thought I was just doing what a daughter should. But every time I asked about the papers I signed, the answers were vague. "Don't worry about it," Jake said. "We'll handle everything," Michelle added. Erin never showed up. Whenever I called her office, the receptionist said she was out on leave. No further details. Then the letters started arriving. Thick envelopes marked "legal notice," all addressed to me. At first, I thought they were hospital bills, until I opened one and felt my stomach drop. Notice of debt transfer and assumption agreement. Per the signed family financial agreement dated, hospital date, Samantha Lewis assumes shared liability for outstanding family debts totaling $163,457. I reread it 3 times. Surely there was a mistake. I confronted Dad first. "What is this?" I demanded, waving the letter. His face darkened. "It's the agreement you signed." "I thought I was signing for medical consent or insurance." "No," he said coldly. "You signed the family contract. You agreed to assume a share of the family's financial obligations. In exchange, you retain rights as an heir and family member." "That's not possible. You tricked me. You're an adult. No one forced you to sign." His words sliced deeper than any lawyers could. Michelle chimed in, arms crossed. "We all took on responsibility. It's only fair." "Fair?" My voice cracked. "You hid this from me." Jake didn't say much, just stared at the floor. Guilt, or something like it, flickered in his eyes, but he didn't speak up. I drove to Erin Carter's office the next morning, determined to get answers. The office was empty, closed. A for lease sign hung crookedly in the window. When I called the number on Erin's business card, it was disconnected. She had vanished. That night, I read the entire agreement again. Buried in legal jargon, one line stood out. "Failure to meet debt obligations will result in forfeiture of inheritance rights and possible legal action by co-signers." In other words, if I didn't pay, my family could sue me for breaking a contract I never fully understood. And they had built it that way, planned it. A net I hadn't seen until it was too late. I wasn't just facing debt. I was facing betrayal by the people who were supposed to love me most. But they had made one mistake. They underestimated me. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My family had trapped me in a legal nightmare. They had planned it carefully, used my love and fear to corner me, but they had underestimated something: my ability to think clearly when everything was falling apart. By dawn, I had a plan. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream. That's what they expected. Instead, I would investigate, quietly, smartly. Because the only way to beat people who hide the truth is to uncover it before they know you're looking. Step 1. Understand the contract. I called a lawyer referral line at the State Bar Association. I need a contract law attorney, urgent. By noon, I had an appointment with someone new. Leah Tran, a specialist in debt and family contract law. Leah listened as I laid out the situation. She reviewed the documents I brought, her brow furrowed deeper with each page. "This isn't just unethical," she said. "It might be criminal." "What do you mean?" "There are signs of fraud, misrepresentation, possibly coercion, especially if they withheld full disclosure at the time of signing." "They did. They rushed me. Erin Carter was supposed to be present, but she never came." "Where is this attorney now?" "Disappeared." Leah nodded. "I'll see what I can find. But first, we need to freeze this situation before they escalate." "Freeze it how?" "You need to stop any further debt collections, and you must not acknowledge or make any payments. That could be seen as agreeing to the terms." Done. I left her office feeling steadier. For the first time, someone was on my side. Step 2. Find Erin Carter. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Bell. Quiet, professional, not cheap, but worth every dollar. I need to find this lawyer. I think she either knew about the fraud or was used as a pawn. He took the file without asking too many questions. "I'll update you in a week." Step 3. Follow the money. I combed through every piece of paperwork my family had given me. Old tax records, loan applications, bank statements, and I noticed patterns. Jake and Michelle had a history of debt, personal loans, business loans, credit cards maxed out and rolled into new lines of credit. They were drowning long before Mom got sick. That's why they needed me. Not because I was family, because I had a clean financial record. To them, I wasn't a daughter or sister. I was a lifeline. And now that lifeline was fighting back. Marcus reported back sooner than expected. "Erin Carter took a leave of absence 6 months ago, officially for medical reasons." "Unofficially?" "She was pressured. Your family's debt consolidation agency, yes, they're connected, approached her with an offer to look the other way." "Did she take it?" "No. She refused. Then she vanished." "Where is she now?" "I found her. She's staying with relatives in another state. She's willing to talk." The next day, I drove 4 hours to meet Erin. She looked thinner, worn down, but her eyes were clear. "Samantha, I was afraid you'd find me." "Why?" "Because I should have warned you. Your family tried to involve me in something illegal. I refused, but when I backed out, they replaced me with forged documents." "They forged your approval?" "Yes. They used my name to make the contract look legitimate." My stomach twisted. "Can you testify to that?" "I can, and I will. I kept records. I knew this might come back someday." I thanked her and drove home in silence. The pieces were coming together. Fraud, forgery, coercion. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was a legal case, one I intended to win. Step 4. Gather allies. I reconnected with Leah. "Erin Carter is willing to testify." "She has records." Leah smiled. "That changes everything. We're not just defending now, we're going on offense." Over the next 2 weeks, we built the case. We gathered documents, witness statements, financial records showing patterns of manipulation and deceit. We also filed for a temporary injunction to stop any debt collection efforts until the fraud investigation was complete. The court granted it, a small but important victory. Meanwhile, at home, I said nothing. Dad, Jake, and Michelle acted like everything was normal. Michelle even invited me to family dinner. "Let's not let this debt thing ruin us," she chirped. I smiled. Of course not. They had no idea the walls were closing in. Step 5. Prepare for battle. Leah drafted the lawsuit papers. "Once we file this," she warned, "it gets public. They'll know you're serious." Good. They might retaliate. Let them try. I had the truth, and I had a plan. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was leading. They had forced me into this fight. Now they were about to see how far I would go. Some people think confrontation happens in a dramatic courtroom or at a family dinner where tempers explode. But the real confrontations, they often happen in quiet offices, with cold facts and no room left to hide. Leah and I filed the lawsuit on a Tuesday. Civil fraud, forgery, coercion. Our goal wasn't just to void the contract, it was to expose everything, to make sure no one could ever pull this stunt again. The day after we filed, my phone rang. Michelle. "What is this?" she snapped. "A lawsuit? Are you insane?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm done being used. You agreed to that contract. I agreed to help Mom, not to pay off years of your bad decisions. You're tearing this family apart." "No," I corrected. "You did that when you tricked me." She hung up. By the end of the week, things escalated. Jake showed up at my house. "Let's just talk," he pleaded. "We can fix this." "It's too late." "Samantha, we're family." "No, Jake. Family doesn't trap each other in debt. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family protects each other." "I didn't know they forged anything." "Then maybe you should have asked before handing me that pen." He didn't argue. He just looked away, defeated. Then came the cease and desist letters from their lawyer. "Withdraw the lawsuit or face counterclaims for defamation and breach of family obligations." Leah and I expected this. "They're trying to scare you," she said. Standard tactic. I didn't flinch. "Let them try." 2 days later, Dad called. "We can settle this privately," he offered. "No lawyers, just us." "No." "You'll regret this." "I already regret trusting you." For the first time, his voice cracked, not from anger, from fear. The court set a date for the hearing. It wasn't a full trial. Yet. It was a motion to dismiss the contract based on fraud and coercion. If we won that, the debt would be voided, and criminal charges might follow. The night before the hearing, Erin Carter called me. "I'm ready," she said. "I have the records, the emails, the fake documents they tried to force me to sign." "Thank you," I whispered. "I couldn't have done this without you." "No," she replied. "They counted on you staying silent. You didn't." The day of the hearing arrived. I wore a simple navy dress. No dramatic flair. Just confidence. Leah stood beside me as we entered the courtroom. On the other side, Dad, Michelle, and Jake sat with their attorney, their faces pale, tired, cornered. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, called us to order. Leah spoke first. She laid out the facts. The rushed signing without full disclosure. The disappearance and coercion attempt against Erin Carter. The forged approval documents. The financial patterns showing deliberate manipulation. Then Erin testified. She presented the emails and draft contracts. She described the pressure she faced from my family and their debt consolidation agency. "I refused to participate," she said firmly. "They retaliated by forging my consent and hiding the truth from Samantha." The judge nodded, taking notes. "Thank you, Ms. Carter." Dad's lawyer tried to dismiss the claims. "Ms. Lewis willingly signed the contract. Family agreements are private matters. The court has no place interfering," Leah countered swiftly. "Contracts based on fraud and coercion are not enforceable, family or not. Ms. Lewis was deceived and deprived of informed consent. That is a matter for this court." When the judge called for closing statements, Dad stood up himself. "Your Honor, this has gone too far. Samantha is exaggerating. She's just angry. We all made sacrifices." "Sacrifices?" I spoke up. "You call forgery and manipulation sacrifices?" The courtroom fell silent. "I was never treated as family. I was treated as an asset. And when I refused to keep paying, you tried to destroy me legally." "That's not true," Michelle cried. The judge raised a hand. "Enough." She reviewed the documents one last time, then looked directly at me. "Ms. Lewis, based on the evidence presented, I find substantial grounds to declare the family contract void due to fraud, coercion, and forgery. Effective immediately, you bear no responsibility for the debts in question." I exhaled. The weight of years lifted from my shoulders in a single sentence. But the judge wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review of possible criminal charges against the other parties involved." Dad's face drained of color. Michelle covered her mouth. Jake sank into his seat. I had done it, not just for myself, but to set a precedent for anyone trapped in contracts disguised as family obligations, for anyone told that love means financial slavery. No more. Not for me. Not for anyone who heard my story. I walked out of that courtroom free and in full control of my future. Winning in court wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the real consequences for them and for me. The judge's decision rippled outward like a stone dropped into still water. By the following week, my father's business license was officially revoked. The state cited not only the fraudulent contract but also previous complaints from subcontractors and clients. Dad tried to appeal, but once the fraud verdict became public, no review board would touch his case. The Lewis Contracting Company, once a family-run firm with a solid reputation, ceased to exist. His tools were repossessed, his trucks auctioned, his office shuttered. Michelle and Jake faced their own fallout. Creditors, emboldened by the court's findings, called in their loans immediately. Without my name on the debts, they had no buffer. Their home went into foreclosure. Jake's car, the same SUV he once flaunted, was repossessed. Michelle's business license was suspended after a state investigation revealed she'd misused family funds to keep her boutique afloat. They declared bankruptcy within a month. The whispers started next. Neighbors, friends, even people who had once defended them. I heard they forged documents. They dragged Samantha into their mess. Serves them right. They couldn't hide behind family loyalty anymore. The community saw the truth, and the truth was merciless. At work, things changed too. Leah Tran, the attorney who had fought beside me, introduced me to a local nonprofit that specialized in financial abuse prevention. "You have first-hand experience," she said. "People need to hear your story." At first, I hesitated. I wasn't sure I wanted to relive it, but then I thought of the others trapped like I had been, people who didn't know they had options, who thought family meant obligation forever, so I agreed. I started as a guest speaker, small groups, libraries, community centers, telling my story not as a victim, but as someone who had fought back, and won. Soon, the nonprofit offered me a position, Family Financial Abuse Advocate. It wasn't just a job, it was a mission, helping others recognize the warning signs, teaching them that love doesn't come with a price tag, guiding them through legal options when manipulation turned into financial imprisonment. Meanwhile, my personal life found a new rhythm. I sold my old condo, the place filled with too many memories of fear and control. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, 2 bedrooms, big windows, a backyard where I could finally plant the herb garden I had always dreamed of. For the first time in years, I woke up without anxiety twisting my stomach. No fear of hidden debts, no panic at unknown phone numbers, no dread of family demands, just peace. Jake emailed me once. "We've lost everything. Hope you're satisfied." I didn't respond because satisfaction wasn't the goal. Accountability was. Michelle tried calling. 12 missed calls in one day. The last voicemail said, "You destroyed this family." No, they had done that themselves. I had simply refused to let them destroy me with it. As for Mom, Lorraine, she never contacted me again. Not once. That silence used to feel like punishment. Now it felt like freedom. Months passed. The nonprofit expanded. We launched a new program, Clear Start Initiative, helping victims of family financial fraud rebuild credit, find housing, and reclaim independence. Leah offered to partner as legal counsel. "Your case set a precedent," she reminded me. "Now, let's help others use it." And we did. At first, it was small victories. A woman getting out from under her brother's fraudulent loans. An elderly man regaining control over his assets after years of coercion by his adult children. A single mom fighting back against a manipulative ex-husband. Each success built something stronger than money. Hope. One afternoon, while reviewing case files at the office, Erin Carter stopped by. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "You could have blamed me. You didn't. Because you stood up when it mattered." She smiled. "Most people don't." "Well," I replied, "we're not most people." By autumn, the media attention around my case had faded, but online, my story continued to circulate. Forums, legal blogs, support groups. If Samantha Lewis can fight back, so can I. Those words became a rallying cry. One crisp October morning, as I stood in my garden trimming rosemary, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, not because the past had vanished, but because I had faced it head on. I had refused to let it define me. The family I was born into tried to make love a contract, but love isn't legalese. It isn't debt. It isn't silence. Love is respect, choice, truth, and I had all three now. For a while, it seemed like everything had settled. The lawsuit was over. The debts were void. I had my life back, or so I thought. 3 months after the judgment, a letter arrived. At first glance, it looked official, a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a typed note. "You may have won in court, but we're not done." No signature. No clue who had sent it. But I had a good guess. I brought it to Leah. She examined the paper carefully. "Typical intimidation tactic. It's meant to rattle you." "Is it from my family?" "Most likely, or someone connected to them. But legally, they can't touch you." "Still, they know where I live." Leah nodded. "Time to tighten security." We took immediate steps. I changed my phone number. Installed a new security system at my house. Leah filed a restraining order against direct or indirect contact from Ronald, Michelle, Jake, or their known associates. Most importantly, we informed law enforcement. "If they cross the line," Leah said, "they'll face criminal charges this time." Then, something happened I hadn't expected. Jake requested mediation. "I want to make things right," he wrote. "Please meet me." At first, I was furious. How dare he ask for a meeting after everything they had done? But Leah advised caution. If he's willing to admit wrongdoing, it could help if more legal issues arise. Reluctantly, I agreed. We met in a neutral location. Leah insisted it be at a law office with witnesses present. Jake looked thinner, exhausted, like the weight of his choices had finally settled on him. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here because I can't live with this anymore." "Then why the threatening letter?" I asked. "That wasn't me," he replied quickly. "I suspect Dad or Michelle. They blame you for everything." "They forged my signature. They trapped me in debt. What did they expect?" Jake lowered his gaze. "I know. I stayed quiet too long. I thought I could fix it without more damage." "It's too late for that. I realize that now." He handed me a folder. Inside were documents, emails, text messages, proof that Michelle and Dad had discussed ways to pressure me into compliance, even after the lawsuit. "Why give me this?" I asked. "Because I can't undo what we did. But maybe this will protect you if they try anything else." I studied him. For the first time, I saw not just guilt, but regret. "Jake, if you truly mean this, cooperate fully with law enforcement." "I will." Leah submitted the new evidence to the court. We also provided it to the police. A week later, Dad and Michelle were served with criminal charges: conspiracy, attempted coercion. The restraining order became a no-contact order enforced by the court. But that wasn't the end. The nonprofit where I worked was contacted by a state legislator. "Your case has set a new legal standard," she told me. "We want your help drafting a bill to prevent family financial coercion." It was surreal. I had gone from victim to advocate to potential policy advisor. Of course, I said, I'd be honored. At the same time, the Clear Start initiative grew rapidly. Our team expanded. More survivors came forward, some who had seen my story online, others who had suffered in silence until now. I started hosting monthly workshops, breaking the contract, recognizing family financial abuse. Each session filled to capacity. The first time I stood before a group of strangers and shared my journey, my hands trembled. But as I spoke, their eyes met mine, not with pity, but with recognition, understanding. One woman approached me afterward. Your story saved me. I was about to co-sign a massive loan for my brother. I stopped because of you. Tears filled her eyes. You didn't just change your life. You changed mine. As my advocacy work grew, so did media attention. Podcasts, news articles, even a documentary crew requested to cover the Clear Start initiative. At first, I hesitated. Going public again meant risking backlash. But then, I remembered. Silence had protected my abusers once. I wouldn't let it protect them, or people like them, again. By spring, the legislation passed the first review stage. It was called the Lewis Act, named after me, designed to protect people from being tricked into family debt contracts, to recognize financial coercion as a form of abuse under state law. Meanwhile, Dad and Michelle pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for community service and mandatory financial ethics courses. Jake testified against them. As part of his plea deal, he agreed to assist in the development of educational materials for the Clear Start initiative. It wasn't total redemption, but it was a step. One evening, after a workshop, Leah pulled me aside. I hope you see what you've done. What do you mean? Most people fight to survive. Few fight to change the system. I smiled. I didn't set out to change anything. I just wanted to be free. And now you're helping others find freedom too. Freedom, not just from debt, but from fear, from manipulation, from silence. My family had tried to turn love into a contract. They had tried to make loyalty a legal trap, but I had rewritten the terms. On my own, on my terms. And this time, the only signature that mattered was mine. By the time summer rolled around, my life had fully transformed, but not in the way I once feared, in the way I had fought for, in the way I had earned. The Lewis Act passed the final vote. Unanimous. For the first time, financial coercion within families was formally recognized as a form of abuse in my state. I stood beside the governor as he signed it into law. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't falter. This isn't just about my story, I said at the press conference. It's about thousands who've been silenced by debt disguised as duty. Today, we change that. The applause was polite, but the emails and letters that flooded my inbox afterward, they were thunderous, and they were real. At the nonprofit, Clear Start Initiative became a model program. We expanded to 5 more cities. We trained social workers, lawyers, and financial advisors to spot and prevent family-based financial fraud. Our waiting list tripled, so did our victories. Each success wasn't just another file closed, it was a life reclaimed. As for my family, the consequences kept rippling outward. Ronald Lewis, once a respected contractor, was blacklisted from every major firm in the region. Even small independent projects refused to hire him. He and Michelle tried to relocate twice, but public records followed them. So did the reputation. Beware of financial fraud, one online forum warned, attaching news articles about their case. They lived now in a small rental unit outside town. No assets, no business, and no allies. Michelle lost most of her social circle. The same people who once praised her entrepreneurial spirit now avoided her. "We don't associate with criminals," a former friend bluntly posted on social media after Michelle tried promoting a new business venture. Her attempt at a fresh start collapsed before it began. Jake kept his promise. He worked with our program to develop workshops on recognizing family debt traps. He spoke honestly about his role, his silence, his complicity. Some people forgave him. Others never would. That was his burden to carry. Not mine. Mom, Lorraine, remained silent. She never reached out. Not once. I later learned she had moved to a small assisted living facility under a pseudonym. Whether out of shame or stubbornness, she had chosen to disappear from my life entirely, and that was her choice to make. Just as walking away had been mine. My own circle flourished. I built new friendships. Ones not based on shared blood or history, but on mutual respect. I reconnected with old college friends who had once drifted away during my family's chaos. They welcomed me back without judgment. The house I purchased became more than a place to sleep. It became home. The garden in the backyard thrived. Rosemary, lavender, basil, and a young maple tree I had planted myself. Each morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor. And each morning, I smiled. Because no one could take this from me. Not anymore. My career evolved too. I was promoted to Director of Survivor Outreach at Clear Start. I spoke at national conferences. I was invited to consult on policy reforms in other states. What had begun as personal survival had grown into a movement. But the most unexpected change? People started calling me not just Samantha Lewis, but a leader, a pioneer, an advocate. I didn't set out to become those things. I simply refused to be silenced, refused to be owned, refused to be another cautionary tale buried in court records. One evening, after a long day at the nonprofit, I sat in my garden. The air was cool. The scent of rosemary and lavender drifted around me. My phone buzzed. A text from Leah. "Your latest workshop helped 3 clients void illegal debt contracts today. Thought you'd want to know." I smiled. Thank you. Because every victory, no matter how small, was a reminder that the fight had been worth it, that the risk had been necessary, that freedom wasn't just a dream, it was a daily, living choice. I had not only escaped my family's financial trap, I had built a life where no one, not even those once closest to me, could ever cage me again. They tried to define me by debt. I redefined myself with resilience. They tried to silence me with contracts. I answered back with courage. They tried to bind me to their mistakes. I forged my own future. Samantha Lewis was no longer just a survivor. She was an architect of empowerment. And the life I lived now? It wasn't inherited. It wasn't given. It was built by me, on my terms, on my timeline, and on a foundation no one could shake. Most people believe betrayal comes from strangers, but the deepest cuts, they come from those we trusted the most. And when it's family, the wound feels unbearable. Because we're taught that family means forever, that family means unconditional love, that family means sacrifice without question. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Love and loyalty are not the same as ownership. Family does not have the right to turn your love into a leash. When I signed those papers at the hospital, I thought I was helping my mother. I thought I was stepping up like a good daughter should. But what I really did was walk into a carefully set trap. Not out of greed, not out of ignorance, but out of trust. Trust that my family wouldn't weaponize my care. Trust that love was enough to keep us honest. They proved me wrong. Again and again. But here's what they didn't expect. They thought I'd stay silent. That shame would keep me quiet. That fear would make me compliant. What they didn't understand was that truth is louder than silence, and courage is stronger than fear. I took back my power, not because I'm braver than anyone else, but because I refused to believe that love must come at the cost of my freedom. To anyone listening right now who feels trapped, whether it's by family, by friends, by people who claim to love you but use that love against you, let me tell you this. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not disloyal for protecting your peace. You are not a bad daughter, son, sibling, or spouse for refusing to carry debts that aren't yours. My family told me that love meant sharing everything, including their mistakes, their debts, their consequences. They were wrong. Love means respect. Love means choice. Love means never having to sign away your freedom to prove your loyalty. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. Silence protects abusers. Speaking up protects yourself. And you deserve to be protected, not just by others, but by your own voice, your own choices, your own courage. The life I live now wasn't given to me. It wasn't inherited. It wasn't bought. It was built, brick by brick, with every no I said to manipulation, with every boundary I defended, with every truth I dared to speak aloud. I don't carry the shame they tried to put on my shoulders. I carry the strength of survival, of resilience, of freedom. I am Samantha Lewis. I am not their contract. I am not their scapegoat. I am not their silent victim. I am the author of my own story. And the next chapters, they belong to me, only me, to anyone out there walking a path like mine. You are not alone. You are not powerless. You are not what they say you are. You are who you decide to become. And the moment you choose truth over fear, you have already begun to reclaim your life. If this story resonated with you, if it opened your eyes or gave you strength, please consider sharing it. You never know who might be silently living through the same nightmare, thinking they're alone. Your share could be the lifeline they've been waiting for. And if you want to hear more stories of survival, strength, and truth, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, because the next chapter we tell could be yours. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. And thank you for fighting for your own freedom.